And we are rolling on May 12th, a very important day, where we're going to look at the question, a factual question on climate change. The topic, hurricanes and other extreme climate events, i.e. severe rise in sea levels, tornadoes, so there are three, are imminent consequences of global warming. For the government, Kayla and he. For the opposition, Bez and Yang. Okay. Let's call this house to order. Wait. I need my page sheet.
And then for time signals, do you want me to count down?
Yeah, another question now.
So I'll slap the table after 1 minute, then 5, 4, 3, 2, slap the table. 30 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4.
Is it okay if we have a timer?
Yeah, I prefer that because I mess up sometimes.
What are you doing in there? It's going to come out.
Okay. All right, let's call this house to order. Government, leader of the government will speak for, and by the way, we're not flip-flopping, we are going straight through to the end. Okay?
All right, hello everyone, thank you for showing up today. The topic we're going to be debating today is hurricanes and other extreme climatic events, a severe rise in sea levels, tornadoes, etc., are imminent consequences of global warming. We both agree on definitions, therefore I won't be stating them. So the debate will be a proposition of fact, in which my teammate and I will be arguing the issue from the affirmative stance. What the proposition hopes to persuade the audience to believe is that as long as human emissions are continuing to occur, hurricanes and other climatic events are going to be imminent consequences. It is not the duty of the proposition to prove that humans are the sole cause of these climatic events, for of course there are other external factors that take into account in the development of storms. However, as long as we prove that we are a contributing factor to the imminent consequences, we have completed our proposition of fact. This issue without a doubt concerns every living human being, for hurricanes and extreme climatic events such as tornadoes, droughts, are destructive forces that have proven to cost the lives of millions of humans and destroyed whole ecosystems. Therefore, the stakeholders involved in this issue are the following. Government officials and world leaders are crucial in spreading the importance of taking action regarding global warming. Scientists and climatologists have commented on the importance of taking action against global warming. With the use of models that provide statistical evidence, scientists have been able to not only reveal the current trends of global warming, but have been able to offer insight into the future predicted trends. The population itself. Hurricanes and other extreme climatic events directly affect us. Not only do they destroy homes and lives, but they also can cause species displacement within ecosystems. In addition to these consequences, the cost of rebuilding and stabilization is not a matter that should be ignored. Also, our food production is potentially at risk, as well as the spreading of disease due to these extreme climatic events. Therefore, if our contribution to this climate is causing these storms to be worse, and thus producing a substantial amount more damage to communities, then it is our duty as citizens to understand how we are affecting the environment and find ways in which we can reduce the amount of harm that is done. Hurricanes are a naturally occurring atmospheric process that occurs within the warm waters near the equator. NASA and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration had divided the development of a hurricane into 4 stages: tropical disturbance, tropical depression, tropical storm, and full-fledged tropical cyclone. The criteria for this debate will be based upon the following criteria: the preponderance of evidence and the quality of evidence. Now, what is the problem? The problem is extremely crucial. Hurricanes and other climatic events have proven to be catastrophic. Humans have died, homes have been ruined, communities have been destroyed as a result of these climatic events. If human involvement is involved, it is our duty to debate this topic. My first assertion is due to the increased temperature from the greenhouse effect, sea level is already rising and expected to continue to rise. The greenhouse effect is a naturally occurring process that is necessary for the sustaining of life, for without it the Earth would be ultimately inhabitable. However, due to the increase of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere from the increase of burning of fossil fuels, natural causes and fluctuations in Earth's climate are now extremely difficult to explain solely by natural causes. According to Professor Hall, a UCLA professor in the Department of Atmospheric and Oceanic Sciences, models using only natural forcing, as well as those using both natural and anthropogenic forcing, show no overlap. This indicates that we have statistical confidence to distinguish the effects of anthropogenic forcing from those of natural forcing. According to National Geographic, the rise in sea level is attributable to 3 primary factors: thermal expansion, melting glaciers and polar ice caps, and ice loss from Greenland and West Antarctica. The article stated that about half of the past century's rise in sea level is attributable to warmer oceans simply occupying more space. The International Panel on Climate Change has had its fair share of input. Sea levels, they state, quote, "Sea level rise will not be uniform across all regions, but by the end of the 21st century, it is very likely that sea level will rise in more than about 95% of the ocean. About 70% of the coastlines worldwide are projected to experience a sea level change within 20% of the global mean. Thus, if we continue down this path of global warming, our coastal cities will be at risk as well as the increased chances of storm surges." The impacts of sea level rise are serious. Not only does the risk of storm surge increase immensely, which I will go over soon, but the fact that many of our coastal cities are under danger indicates that this problem should not be taken lightly. My second assertion is that the number of hurricanes that will occur due to climate change is still under intensive research. But the warmer ocean surface temperature, along with the contributing rise in sea levels, will cause stronger impacts, thus proving they are an imminent consequence of global warming. Many are familiar with the disastrous effects that resulted in Hurricane Katrina. Of course, there were various other contributing factors, but Katrina serves as an example of the destruction that results from storm surge. According to the National Hurricane Center, storm surge is an abnormal rise of water generated by a storm over and above the predicted astronomical tides. It is produced by water being pushed towards the shore by the force of the winds moving cyclonically around the storm. Thus, with an increase of sea level rise, this will continually amplify coastal storm surge, for higher seas mean higher storm surges. In addition to this, the Center for Climate and Energy Solutions states warmer sea surface temperatures could intensify tropical storm wind speeds, potentially delivering more damage if they make landfall. They also commented that rainfall rates during these storms will increase by about 20%. And according to reports done by Seth Borenstein from US Today, in which the quotes Harold Brooks, a top researcher at the National Weather Center, it is extremely difficult to study the future predictions of tornado seasons when the current seasons are equally as difficult. This difficult is because twisters are usually small weather events that aren't easily stimulated in large computer models. However, Brooks discussed that there are 2 main factors that cause tornadoes: moist energy in the atmosphere and wind near the surface. Obviously, the more moist energy and wind shear there is, the more likely a tornado will occur. Thus, as the atmosphere warms, it will hold more moisture. This will make it more unstable and thus accumulate more moist energy. Brooks goes on to state that if there's more moist energy, and that could lead to more tornadoes. The same could be said for wind shear. For more wind shear can mean less tornadoes. However, Brooks and Stanford University scientist Noah Diffenbach believe that one ingredient has to win out, and Brooks says it's hard to tell which one will. Recent computer simulations show that the moist energy may overcome the reduced shear and produce at least more severe thunderstorms, if not tornadoes. Given what is happening lately, Brooks believes there will be fewer days of tornadoes but more twisters on the days that occur. Therefore, it is clear to see that with increased warming of the atmosphere due to anthropogenic forcings, the intensity of climatic events is an imminent consequence. Droughts are also an imminent consequence of global warming. I'm sure that we are all aware that California is in the midst of a drought that is having a severe impact on statewide agriculture and water resources. Some communities are currently living within areas of severe water shortage, while other companies are not implementing strict water restrictions. Now, to understand global warming and its effect on droughts, it is important to understand the processes that lead to droughts. The proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences found through an analysis of historical time series of observed California statewide temperature that California has historically shown to experience, am I done?
You have 15 seconds, but yeah.
Oh, sorry. To experience, it's been described as a lack of participation over an extended period, usually a season or more. This can have severe impacts on agriculture, animal life, and human health and survival. The National Weather Service claims there are 3 commonly used definitions of droughts.
I now stand open for cross-examination and points of clarification. Thank you, Kayla.
Let's just want to take time to prep. You have 3 minutes prep time to go to the debate.
Huh?
Okay. First question.
Yes.
Do you agree that primary sources like peer-reviewed scholarly articles are more credible than secondary sources like websites or media that tells you what scientists might have said in scholarly articles?
I do believe scholarly articles are valuable, but I do believe that scientists that produce studies on these scholarly articles
Look at the audience, not
is
her.
still valuable
Yeah.
evidence.
Okay. Do you realize that out of the 15 sources you cited, 10 sources are secondary sources from websites and not original articles?
Yes, the sources that you also had also incorporated articles that actually sided with the proposition side. So I think that both sources that you have, all the sources that you have, also incorporated multiple secondary resources as well.
Actually, it's not about my sources right now, but moving on. Do you agree that scientific models created... sorry, next question. You didn't get there. For hurricanes and storm surge, do you agree that the evidence you used were making predictions based on theories and certain famous hurricanes only, and no analysis or models were involved?
Well, I also clarified at the beginning of my speech that we are not arguing about whether global warming is a contributing factor. We're not arguing over that. We're arguing that these storms, because of global warming, are getting more intense. So therefore,
Tell me.
by storm surge happening, it's getting more intense. And I use the hurricanes and other sources because those are examples of storm surge that is occurring.
But actually, the scientists or whoever cited them in your sources were just hypothetically speaking what might happen due to theory, and they didn't really use.
Yes, I know
evidence.
that's true because a lot of studies are still going on with hurricanes. I never argue that there wasn't studies that are continuing on. It's a very hard thing to study hurricanes because there's a lot of variability with them. But I'm trying to say that global warming is a contributing factor to why they're getting more intense, and there is this.
Yeah, but it's only based on theories. Next
So is
question.
okay.
Your second point was the number of hurricanes and tornadoes is not sure, but the impact will be stronger due to increased ocean temperature, thus proving they are imminent consequences of global warming.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, the ocean temperature increases due to poor natural reasons as well. Like one period is Central Pacific El Nino.
I know.
You cannot conclude that it is global warming.
I also
mainly.
stated at the beginning of my speech once again that there are external factors involved, but I'm not trying to argue external factors. I'm trying to argue global warming.
Okay. But the impact will be stronger due to many reasons as well, such as destructions of the ecosystem and people moving to coastal areas to live. Global warming is the main cause.
The main cause of people wanting to live near coastal cities?
No, main cause of sea level rise and hurricanes and tornadoes being more intense.
Well, the ocean is continuing to warm, which means there's going to be more condensation, which means there's going to be more moist energy in the atmosphere, and that's what hurricanes feed off of.
That's fine.
Thank you. Chair will now recognize the leader of the opposition for a speech not to exceed 7 minutes in length. So you can get my little notepad out here. All ready.
Ready?
Hi everyone, my name is Bez and I'm here as leader of the opposition.
Hi, Bez.
And hi, I hear two main points that I'm going to tell you about today. The first is that there is too much uncertainty to be able to prove anything. The second is there are so many different things that are going on, it's hard to separate any impacts and hence conclude that it is global warming. But firstly, what I want to talk about is the exact nature of the problem because I don't think this was fully clarified by the proposition. I should make clear that as the opposition, we do not disagree that there is climate change or indeed global warming. We do not disagree that there are patterns or of other extreme events that are changing in some instances. However, what we disagree on is we cannot agree with the government in attributing these hurricanes and other extreme events to global warming. Rather, we believe that there are a number of fundamental changes, such as an increase in pollutants, which lead to climate change. It is the direct consequence of these fundamental changes that we contest is the cause of the changing patterns, rather than simply the rise in the Earth's atmospheric and oceanic temperatures, which is what we want you to consider and what the government has said themselves. So, going on to my first point, which is the uncertainty. And this uncertainty manifests itself in 3 different ways. The first is unreliable data. According to Nature, according to the peer-reviewed Nature magazine, 2014, there are temporarily inconsistent and potentially unreliable global historical data which hinder the collection of trends in tropical cyclone activity, end quote. And secondly, according to Christopher Hennon of UNC Asheville, the poor quality of tropical cyclone data provides the severe constraint on the ability of climate scientists to determine to what degree tropical cyclones have responded to shifts in the climate, to evaluate theories on how tropical cyclones will respond to climate change in the future, and he concludes that the root cause for the poor data is the severity of tropical cyclone conditions. And thus, the most tropical cyclones are not observed directly, and those that are often not sampled sufficiently. Secondly, with regards to unreliable evidence, we go on to the fact that model creation is too difficult. Wired magazine gives a very brief, example of how they do these models. They say they set up 2 models, one without fossil fuels and the other chugging and burning. And the Bulletin of American Meteorological Society suggests that over the past 4 years, this supplement has published 20 attribution studies on precipitation, and they are split between events that did and did not find human influences on precipitation. So here we can see that there are so many models, and a lot of them are on one side, which is ours, a lot of them are on their side, and because of that, there's too much uncertainty to conclude with the government. Third, there is an uncertainty in the intertwining of factors. The National Geoscience Journal of 2013 suggests that our results raise the probability of external factors, particularly anthropogenic aerosols, could be the dominant cause of historical tropical storm variability and highlight the potential importance of future changes in aerosol emissions. Very quickly, because I've forgotten to say this, I just want to clear up that hurricanes, cyclones, and typhoons are all the same weather phenomenon, and we just use different names for these storms in different places, because I'm using a lot of articles which refer to these things. And then secondly, there are a number of studies such as Swanson 2008, Vecchi et al. 2008, which conflict over the nature of the impact as suggested by the Geophysical Fluid Dynamics Laboratory 2015. They suggest that the cause or causes of the recent enhanced warming of the Atlantic and its effect on the Atlantic tropical cyclones remains highly uncertain. And they go on to suggest a number of anthropogenic and other factors must be considered as potential contributors, and the science remains highly uncertain in these areas. And then they conclude, in summary, neither are model projections for the 21st century, nor are analyses of trends in Atlantic hurricane or tropical storm counts over the past 120 years support the notion that greenhouse gas-induced warming leads to an increase in either tropical storm or overall hurricane numbers in the Atlantic. Secondly, I'll move on to my second point, which is there are a number of different factors which themselves impact climate change and indeed global warming, which we consider to be a symptom and not the cause. This comes under 2 categories: external influences and unnatural influences. So my partner will talk more about the natural influences, and I'll go on to talk about the external influences. Firstly, this manifests itself in greenhouse gases. So we see that Nature 2013 suggests that here we show that human-induced increases in greenhouse gases have contributed to the observed intensification of heavy precipitation events found over approximately 2/3 of the data-covered parts of northern hemisphere. And the geophysical research letters suggest that the attribution of extreme weather to anthropogenic greenhouse gas emissions is true. And then secondly, alongside greenhouse gas emissions, we see that there are also aerosol emissions, and Nature 2011 suggests that our findings suggests that anthropogenic aerosol emissions influenced a range of societal important historical climate events such as peaks in hurricane activity and Sahel drought. I will quickly talk about the natural causes, and this will be carried on. The Journal of American Meteorological Society 2015 suggests we find no evidence to suggest that the hypothesis that global warming contributed to this, to the extreme events in Northern America in 2014. Sorry. Finally, I'll go on to the point that the hiatus in global warming is a confirmation of the mixing of factors. We can see that there has been a hiatus in global warming between 2001 and 2014, as suggested by Nature magazine 2016. And while this has been happening, there's been an increase in greenhouse gas emissions. However, there's been an increase in meteorological and hydrological disasters since 2000, as of Dominic Holmes 2015. So, how do you reconcile these facts? The facts that the globe has not been warming up, the fact that there has been more meteorological events, and the fact that there has been a greater increase in greenhouse gas emissions. We conclude that from this, we can say that it is the greenhouse gas emissions as opposed to the warming of the Earth, which is suggested by the proposition, which causes these events. And that, along with the uncertainty, together, in our opinion, prove that the greenhouse gases and climate change, rather than global warming, can be suggested as the cause for these hurricanes and other extreme climate events. Thank you very much, and I open myself to cross-examination.
Yeah.
Okay, so first of all, I really wanted to understand why do you feel that increased warming and human emissions are mutually exclusive?
Over here. Yeah.
Sorry.
I just want to confirm that the definitions pre-agreed with this debate was that global warming was, and I want to quote you to get it correct,
Yes.
was an increase in the Earth's atmospheric and oceanic temperatures widely predicted due to an increase in the greenhouse effect. So we suggest that you must only be looking at the global warming rather than the global warming which is influenced by the greenhouse gas emissions. We consider the greenhouse gas emissions to influence both events.
You know, that human emissions are what's caused, like we're arguing that human emissions are a factor in global warming. So how can you separate the two?
That's exactly what we're talking about. You have to prove to us that it is global warming on its own which causes
global warming
these
involves
events.
Human emissions.
We suggest that
you also
global
said
warming and
pollutants.
these events are both caused by these
You said
emissions.
pollutants as well in your brief, and pollutants are known as carbon emissions, CO2. Like that's being included in the global warming.
I just want to make clear to everyone that there is a very big difference between global warming and climate change, and that's what you must consider. It's only the global warming which is the subject of this debate.
Okay, moving on. So yes, there are external factors that are causing extreme climatic events, like you mentioned, but the fact that we have some evidence that hurricanes will increase, is that enough to justify that they're an imminent consequence? Wouldn't you agree with that?
What we argue that there's too much uncertainty. I've talked about how there's studies on your side and studies on our side and studies which are in the middle saying that it's uncertain. Because of this, we can't say anything about a causation. There's too much uncertainty.
A lot of your studies incorporated sources that were only measuring marine air temperatures and sea surface temperatures. Clearly, when you put the number on global warming, like that number always is going to depend on what you're measuring. So a lot of your studies were measuring the marine air versus the land air. Clearly that's going to be a difference because the ocean's going to heat up a lot faster with high heat capacity. So how can you say that the model predictions are unreliable when you're measuring an apples to oranges comparison?
Could you give an example?
Well, because a lot of your studies were saying that, like, oh, it's the El Nino effect, or it's the you're measuring air temperatures and land sea temperatures. You can't measure an ocean in a land temperature. Obviously, it's going to make your data look skewed because they're completely two different things.
I can't comment on the exact specifics because you haven't provided any, but again, I'd like to point to the fact that you refer to the Earth's atmospheric and oceanic temperatures in the definition, which is what we also referred to.
Okay. And how would you explain studies suggesting that warmer water, through examination of tidal gauges, are providing evidence?
So,
the tidal gauge, there's been evidence suggesting that GCMs with global climate models, which you're arguing are unreliable, have been actually more accurate than projected through the analysis of tidal gauges, which is actually clear, hard observation of tides. How would you explain that?
So with regards to GCMs, I had a point in my brief of the sorry, give me a second. Sorry, it was Lomborg, and he was talking about how GCMs
Yes.
are not.
Yeah, I also found a refutation to your Lomborg quote. Lombard also stated later on, if you were to read the rest of that, he said eventually heat extremes will also start to take their toll. Thus, while global warming may not produce immediate, nasty, and costly weather like you're stating, catastrophes that with much of the rhetoric has claimed, some weather trends are already less desirable and sustained warming will increase a number of these unwanted trends.
That's time.
Sure.
Answer briefly.
I feel like you have stated in the motion that it's to do with imminent causes, and I think you yourself have just said that there are no imminent causes in that quote.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. We will now hear from the deputy member of the opposition for a speech, of the government, for a speech not to exceed 7 minutes in length. And let me get you. Okay. Ooh, you're tall. No, you don't have to go back that far. That's fine. That's good. You're good. Oh, would you? Yeah, that would be swell.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to reiterate the topic: hurricanes and other extreme climate events, as a severe rise in sea levels and tornadoes, are imminent consequences of global warming. There must be a clear articulation of what global warming is within this debate in order to make any kind of decision as judges. The proposition and the opposition had agreed on a definition of global warming, which states an increase in Earth's atmospheric and oceanic temperature widely predicted to occur due to an increase in greenhouse gas effects resulting especially from pollution. There must be a clear articulation to why climate change and global warming are distinct, and there has not been a definition agreed upon on what climate change is. So the only concrete definition that we can predicate ourselves from is a definition of global warming that we have concluded, which states that it may rise from the pollution. So the burden of proof for the proposition is not to state humans are the causes of global warming or climate change, nor is it the burden to prove that natural causes exacerbate global warming, but rather all we need to prove is that global warming, which may conclude from anthropogenic thoughts, are an immediate consequence, can result in immediate consequences such as hurricanes and other extreme climate events. So we do not have to prove, like what Bez has stated in his speech, that there are natural causes, anthropogenic causes to global warming or climate change. We have agreed upon on the definition that states that global warming comes from pollution or natural causes, as long as we can prove that there is a effect that predicates from greenhouse gas effects, whether it's from pollution or natural causes, and that has an impact on hurricanes and other extreme events, we win this debate. On the first point that my partner has stated is sea level rises, and I'd like to go further into that speech. The reasoning behind sea level rises can occur through climate change or global warming due to the heating of the global temperature. This rises ice glaciers to melt, with in return raises the sea level rise. This can create detrimental impacts to the people in the coastal areas, as much as affects coastal habitats that could create harms in the overall ecosystem. As I stated above, it is natural causes which influence sea level rises, but also the impact that humans have when it comes to global warming and the heating of Earth temperature due to pollutants such as CO2 levels can create sea level rises to rise due to ice glaciers melting. According to National Geographic in 2014, in the article "Sea Level Rises, Ocean Levels Are Getting Higher," indicates that warming from sea level rises especially threatens coastal cities around the world, which could wipe out millions of people. Additionally, Damien Carrington in 2014 indicates as the head of environmental editor at The Guardian writes that warming causes massive ice caps to melt, which causes the overall sea level rises to rise. I quote, "The loss of entire western Antarctica ice sheet will eventually cause up to 4 meters, 13 feet of sea level rises, which will be devastating for low-lying and coastal areas around the world." We need to articulate clearly that anthropogenic influences on global warming, as well as natural phenomena that increase the temperature or the way behaviors work, must be distinguished in this debate. Second is the impact of ocean acidification. Climate change causes the natural habitat of ocean to be disturbed through ocean acidification and deoxification. Reasoning is emission caused by humans creates ocean acidification in the status quo, which could have multiple harms. Human carbon emissions, that is one of the main proponents of climate change, can create oceans to be more acidic than has ever been. Human disrupts the natural pulse of carbon cycle in the ocean, which creates problems of the environment. This creates multiple problems for the ecosystem as well. According to Joseph Romm, a physicist and climate expert from Fellow of American Association for Advancement of Science, indicates that human carbon emission is the causing reason to oceans to be more acidic than ever. The carbon emission by humans causes the natural global temperatures to soar, which creates imbalances within the ecosystem and the natural habitats that live within the coastal cities. Additionally, Jerry Milio with the Global Change Research Program states that increase in level of carbon dioxide has a direct effect on the world's ocean system as well. This creates carbonic acid, which could be corrosive environments for the marine organisms. This is an example of how ocean acidification, which may be natural and anthropogenic thoughts of global warming, can influence the direct consequences of hurricanes. Now going to their positions in Bez's speech. First, he outlines oppositions as well uncertainties within their data, which he outlines 2 sources from National Magazine and a study. Both of their studies are conclusive of hurricanes, but none of it addresses the points that my partner and I have made in our speeches of droughts, which are not based on hurricane models, and also ocean acidification, which is also based on actual acidification data that my authors have concluded that has risen because of the pollutants that have occurred in the status quo. Furthermore, the data that they have presented are not conclusive of whether or not all hurricane data should be ignored. The hurricane data that we have still presented still come from peer-reviewed studies that show that there has been an increase in patterns of frequency and intensity of hurricanes in the past, and that the prediction models are still accurate enough to predict the hurricanes that are happening in the status quo. Second, the external factors that they have concluded are irrelevant in this debate. We have agreed on a definition of global warming which states that pollutants that are caused by humans can be part of the definition of global warming, but we do not exclude that natural phenomena are part of global warming, which means that as long as we prove that global warming, whether it is anthropogenic or natural causes, has an immediate consequence to the impacts of hurricanes and extreme climate events, we have no burden of proof to prove that there are external factors such as greenhouse gas emission or natural causes that when they cite natives.com that talks about different kinds of natural ways that temperature rises. I would like to further articulate that my partner and I have articulated 3 different positions within this debate that outline why any kind of those extreme climate events are a severe are direct impacts and consequences. The opposition has not made any analysis in the first speech that talks about any events other than hurricanes. So you need to look at it in a bigger picture and talk about why severe climate events lead to different. Global warming leads to other severe climate events such as sea level rise, droughts, and also ocean acidification. And thank you.
Thank you. I now stand open for cross-examination and points of clarification.
Hi. Can you clarify to the audience the time period we agreed, which would be describing imminent?
Sure. I'll read it. Oh, was it 10 to 15 years?
Can you now point to which sources that you have which talk in a frame that is within that 10 to 15 years?
All of our sources are predicate. With which sources? We have 30 sources.
Yeah, can you point to your sources which suggest that this will happen in the next 10 to 15 years?
What do you this is?
The extreme climate events.
Okay, so I'll go straight down from our point. So sea level rises are conclusive of actual temperature rises that we have records in the past events where Arctic ice has increased the sea level rise. So that's not conclusive of like 10 to 15 years. We're predicating off past records and how past records show that there has been a rise in sea level rises due to the temperature warming up.
I just want to highlight that he was talking about past rises. Secondly, because you've brought us up on it, it's okay. As you brought me up on it, I'm going to have to come back to it. You suggest that, is it correct that you suggest that anything that is from climate change is relevant to this debate?
So I don't know what your definition of climate change is. The definition that we only provided is global warming. So I think climate change definition that you're providing is kind of relevant in this case. However, the global warming definition that you and I have provided before this debate is inclusive of pollutants and other externalities that could cause the Earth's warm.
To confirm to everyone, it says that these temperatures are widely predicted to occur. This is some kind of guess or some kind of conclusion that it's predicted to occur. So what I suggest to the audience is that they have to conclude that it is global warming and global warming alone in a direct causation rather than an indirect causation.
Sir, what's your question?
Have you proved through direct causation that global warming is causing these events, as opposed to an indirect causation through greenhouse gases?
No, see, you're getting it wrong. So we're saying that there is a direct correlation between global warming and the impacts that we have outlined in our speeches because of 3 reasons. I don't understand where this indirect consequences come from.
I'll come back to it in the final speech. Finally, how can you explain the increase in these climatic events coinciding with a hiatus in global warming?
So how do I explain it with hiatus? So the hiatus argument is not really in the context of past records. So we're saying that, yeah, there might be hiatus of like the temperature rise or whatever. But that doesn't conclude that the years of temperature rise that has happened in the past centuries conclude that there are patterns historically that suggest that there are increases in frequency. And also the fact that prediction models are predicated off past patterns, so you can't ignore past patterns that are...
Okay, that's time. Thank you very much. Chair will now hear from the deputy member of the opposition for a speech not to exceed 7 minutes in length. Hear, hear.
You also have 3 minutes prep time, by the way.
And you have 3 minutes of prep time to use whenever you want. If you want it now, later, before your rebuttals, after class, tonight at 6, whatever. Can you move slightly that way? Yeah, I agree.
What up? Oh,
You slide that way a little bit, yeah.
she's timing now. So.
Okay. So the proposition is trying to say that hurricanes and other extreme climate events, a severe rise in sea levels, tornadoes, are imminent consequences of global warming. First, Yi-sung just said we weren't talking about things like droughts and acidic ocean conditions. I disagree. First, we didn't talk about it, but it's not because we try to overlook the impacts of those things. But first, droughts wasn't really included in the topic. And second, in Kayla's evidence, she didn't get to it, but in her brief she said, according to some center, droughts is supposed to have some kind of rate increase. But however, that isn't said by the center, but by IPCC back in 2007. And as I'm going to get to it, the models are kind of flawed, and a model that early, that old, I sincerely doubt that model is going to make any impact as of today. And also about acidic ocean conditions, well, I do agree that humans have cause destruction of ecosystem that led to consequences. But I don't think acidic ocean conditions is a part of climate events, which is what it's supposed to be our topic. Now let me get to the part that Kayla said. My partner based things on models or something, but she said the tidal rise things are based on observations. However, the database is kind of flawed anyway due to National Hurricane Center back in 2013. There may be opportunities in the next decade or so to improve our monitoring capabilities and reduce the uncertainties both in operations and in the best track database. So observations is basically talking about the data that they have, but if they're saying in 2013 that there are many improvements to make, basically the database is kind of flawed, so basically everything is uncertain at this point. And also, the models are also uncertain. According to Wang et al., they say there is no indication of increasing tropic cyclone activity over the U.S. southeast coastal region during CP El Nino as in observations. So the model and observations don't really go together. The difference between the models and observations is likely due to the bias of the models in response to the shift of tropical heating associated with CP El Nino, as well as the model bias in the mean circulation. So the models are also kind of flawed, and also there's uncertainty in what increasing temperature would really mean to imminent consequences. First of all, there is a controversial thing about intensity versus frequency. Proposition teams say that one of them say that the frequency is not sure at this point. The other one says that both intensity and frequency are supposed to go up due to the increasing temperature of ocean temperature. However, according to Nelson et al., in 2015, salient features of the late 21st century projected changes include a substantial reduction in global tropical cyclone frequency, but an increase in the frequency of the most intense storms. And according to Kahn and Elsner, in 2015 also, global warming over the ocean is seen to contribute to the efficiency of intensity. Intensity increases at the expense of frequency, hence no change in overall activity. So how can you say that it is the imminent consequence of a rising ocean temperature? And some studies actually predict a decrease in tropical cyclone counts, and they suggest that it's due to increased carbon dioxide, and that's in 2013 and stated by Marlet et al. In addition to the uncertainty out there, there are other factors or causes that lead to extreme events and or also global warming. So the proposition is trying to say that as long as they can prove that human has some factors in it and increased temperature has some factor in it, they prove that global warming leads to imminent consequences. However, there are things that human did wrong, like destruction of ecosystem and or the depletion of the groundwater that may lead to worse hurricanes or sea level change. But then it's not like mainly global warming. And as I'm going to get to it, maybe they actually contribute more to imminent consequences than global warming. And first is the destruction of ecosystem. According to Mona et al. In 2013, ecosystem degradation triggers more disasters and reduces nature's and society's resilience against climate change impacts and disasters. And they mention nothing about how global warming might have an impact in it. As an example of ecosystem destruction, according to Everett et al. In 2014, Mumbai's mangroves have been significantly depleted through historical city development and continuing encroachment. And just like in Mumbai, there are other places that due to city development and they made destructions to ecosystems, such as the mangroves. And according to Spalding et al. In 2014, there is a growing consensus that mangroves do attenuate wave action and reduce debris movement during major natural hazards. Mangroves help protect the shores against natural disasters, and destruction of mangrove leads to more devastating natural disasters. Also, according to Alongi and McHopet in 2015, mangrove destruction adds another 10% to CO2 release from tropical deforestation.
You don't want.
Want to use any
Oh, yeah.
time?
Yeah.
None of the time?
Can I start? Hi. So, what is global warming in your words?
An increase in temperature due to, let's see your definition, an increase in the Earth's atmospheric and oceanic temperatures widely predicted to occur due to an increase in the greenhouse effect resulting especially from pollution.
So, when we agreed on the fact, especially from pollutants, are they exclusive of natural phenomena that increase global warming?
No, I'm not saying it's excluding natural phenomena, but the point is, if global warming contributed a little or a lot to the imminent consequences, if the imminent consequences is actually just due to natural causes, you can say that it's global warming that's doing it.
So, isn't that the point of the proposition, is to prove that the imminent consequence of global warming are these three events?
Yeah, I agree.
Agreed. So, what is the burden of proof for the proposition and opposition? Like, what do you have to prove to win this thing?
The burden of proof actually lies just in proposition, but you guys are saying that it's mainly the increase in temperature and not about other things. And as I said, increase in temperature, according to theories, doesn't really predict an increase in cyclone activities or sea level rise.
Can you point me to a single source that you presented in this debate that talks about sea level rises and its relations to temperature increase?
Yeah, I mean, so according to Wade and Conrad in 2016, groundwater-induced regional variations in the sea level can be larger than those due to post-glacial rebound and other things that might be due to an increase in temperature. So basically, the groundwater depletion leads to much more sea level change than just...
But does that article deny the fact that global temperature rise has increased sea level rises in recent years, like our authors have presented?
No.
Great. So, as long as we prove that there are anthropogenic impacts that led to sea level rises to increase, do we win this debate?
Not really. I mean, if there are anthropogenic forces that did like let's say 0.1% of the whole thing, it doesn't really mean much.
Where do we conclude, like, where it needs to be substantial enough? Like, where do we conclude the definition of how much, like, we have to have, like, 80% of burden that, you know, humans are the cause, or vice versa, where 80% of the burden has to be? Where do we conclude the definition of imminent or consequences where it needs to be a certain amount of burden?
But if you're saying that, then
Okay, thank you. We will not, you're going to take your 3 minutes now. We will not flip-flop. We will hear from the government. Yes, rebuttal. Hopefully with 4-part refutation.
So there's a sign-in sheet not going around. Does everyone have a ballot? If you get one, there you go. Everyone else.
That's a pretty smart case, actually.
Yeah. Hurricane.
No, I thought the rain season.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I'm guessing plus everything else about this.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But, she's... Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Both of them are
Yeah. Both of these are really good, but they're just terrible communicators.
Yeah. One of my friends. It's okay that one of my friends from like my friends come into the banquet, right?
No,
My friends out.
still not the eight.
Okay. I got an email from Sylvia. She asked if it was okay to speak just casually.
Yeah, I saw that. Oh, I got one from Kelly Belly.
Yeah. What's the room number here? What's the room number?
Is this also 2 minutes?
5 minutes. 5 minute rebuttal.
Five minutes?
It's my friend Matt.
What's your friend's name?
Matt.
Matt? Hi, Matt. Professor Miller.
What's up, dude? That's the other day.
You have 1 minute of your prep time left. Thank you.
This is how we play the snack.
Okay. Let's call this house to order.
All right.
Chair will recognize the leader of the government for a speech not to exceed 7 minutes in length.
5 minutes.
5 minutes in length, yes, thank you.
The opposition has failed to provide sufficient evidence as to why hurricanes and other extreme climatic events are not imminent consequences of global warming. The only argument they were able to justify was the ambiguity of global climate models. Therefore, while there is still some truth to this, the fact that there is intensive research being done as well as studies utilizing tidal gauges that suggest the dangers that come along with warmer sea surface temperatures indicates that we can't simply ignore the problem. Also, the opposition stated that many of the articles that state ambiguity of climate models did not completely rule out the ideal that warmer seas and sea level rise. Therefore, the opposition is stating that the external factors are playing a role in the overall heating is not a valid argument. We agree with the opposition that external factors along with global warming are playing a role. However, this debate was not about that. This debate was whether hurricanes and other extreme climatic events are imminent consequences of global warming. Of course, global warming is not the sole cause of these warming temperatures, but the opposition has agreed in our favor by stating that global warming is indeed a contributing factor. But this fact alone is in favor of the opposite proposition for the city that warming is still having an effect. We also wanted to reiterate our stance that the intensity of these violent storms is going to increase, not necessarily the frequency of these storms. The constant warming from human emissions is going to raise the sea level, which in turn will increase the chances of stronger hurricanes and storm surges. More moist energy in the air will more than likely overpower wind shear, thus resulting in stronger and more powerful twisters present in tornadoes. Warmer waters from increased warming and the ocean's high heat capacity will result in already increasing rates of ocean acidification, as my partner talked about. This will in turn result in a chain of events that will begin to directly affect us. Lastly, droughts are increasing the probability of the warm, dry conditions that result in the conditions of a drought. Therefore, because of our actions, we are having a direct effect on our environment. Much of the research regarding warming and climatic events is still underway. But if we continue to have this warming on our Earth, are we supposed to just wait around and wait until it becomes virtually impossible to stop? Also, with this warming, what chain of events are likely to occur in the next 10 to 15 years? We all know this is not an overnight phenomenon. But failing to take preventative measures and utilize sustainable energy, we are setting ourselves up for danger ahead. Every single one of us sitting in this room is responsible for utilizing and benefiting from the burning of fossil fuels. It's time to look at the greater impacts of this. Do we want to see our coastal cities begin to erode? Do we want to have a greater risk of stronger hurricanes that can increase the already immense amount of damage that results from such storms? Or are we ready to look at the facts and understand that we are very much playing a role in our environment? I'm sure no one will argue with me when I say that we would be nothing without the environment that provides for our well-being. Knowing this, if our very means of survival is in danger, wouldn't you want to get to the source of the problem? For these very reasons and the arguments I presented to you prior, I urge you to vote for the proposition. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Chair will now, do they have prep time
They
left?
have 3. They have 3 minutes.
They have 3 minutes, so use it, I guess,
If you want.
if you want to.
Oh, she's finished. It's fine. Wait, is Yang doing third speech too?
Sorry?
Is Yang doing third speech?
I'm going to.
You're doing it, okay. Olivia. Essentially, not really with 5 islands got swallowed.
Is it?
Huh?
Who's it by?
HuffPost. So you gotta find a real article. But it's like what you're talking
I
about.
have an article by, I have like the research, I have like the study that those people did. So I have that, and then I have I don't have any other information about people being displaced by climate change yet.
There's another article Ian posted a while back. We debated this one time.
Right,
And I
right.
completely agree.
Yeah, it's hard to find.
Yeah, but I found one good one, and it was published literally like 5 days ago.
I'll send you
So.
one, but remember Ian posted one right after the
Yeah.
thing? I'll
Yeah.
send that one to you as well. Thank you, too.
Remind me, before the party, or after the party, or whatever we're meeting at. I have set up
Or do you want to
what?
are we working with this, or do you want to manage it?
We're gonna immediately go. We're gonna. I gotta print out your thing.
Right.
And then we're gonna go over there and get set up. I'm going to prepare for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
No, it's better. That's fine.
Yeah. As long as I'm comfortable with everything is.
We should be fine. Yeah, Matt can help us carry stuff.
Yeah.
We can be a lot.
Great. Okay, this house will come to order.
Hi, everyone.
This way, please. Stand that way.
Hi, everyone. I'm here to finish the case for the opposition and provide the nail in the coffin to prove that global warming cannot be stated to be a cause of imminent extreme climate change. Now, what the proposition have failed to understand is the exact crux of this debate. In fact, they have grossly misunderstood this. What they clearly don't understand is the distinction between global warming and climate change. So when they say that global warming causes acidification, they have to be suggesting that the increased temperatures causes a greater amount of acidification in the sea. However, we know this is not true. It's actually because of the pollutants that we're putting out. And what we're suggesting is that these pollutants are themselves causing global warming and are themselves also causing these events. So what the proposition have to prove is that it's just this global warming in an isolated fashion that is causing these events, and they have failed to understand that with regards to this debate. Secondly, we have gone to suggest that there's too much uncertainty, which manifests itself firstly in unreliable data. A lot of this stuff is hurricanes, this is stuff out at sea. This is stuff which is too hard to completely be able to measure right now. Secondly, we suggest that there's too much difficulty in creating models. These GCM models, which are held up to be so high by the proposition, they involve modeling everything from a particle to the ground to the whole system together. And this in itself causes too much uncertainty to be able to say that global warming causes these events. Finally, we say that there's an uncertainty in the intertwining of too many factors. There are far too many factors involved, which means that it's too hard to separate what's caused by global warming and what's caused by the pollution. Next, I will go on to use Kayla 2016 and say that hurricanes are not necessarily increasing frequency, but she says that it increases intensity. Again, I want to remind everyone that intensity is not what we argued about. We argued about a greater increase in probability. And she herself has just admitted that it does not necessarily increase the frequency of these events. So I would conclude with that, but there's too much more to say. I will actually conclude with an article that Hee-Sung used from the Geophysical Fluid Dynamic Laboratory, which He has clearly now noticed and decided not to talk about it, which suggests that we therefore conclude that greenhouse warming we therefore cannot conclude that greenhouse warming has caused a detectable change in Atlantic hurricane activity. As a conclusion, I would like to say that there's too much uncertainty to be able to prove what the proposition want you to prove, and hence they cannot overcome the burden of proof which they are tasked with, and we rest the case for the opposition. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The chair now invites the competitors to cross the house, shake hands, and congratulate their opponents on a job well done. Thank them for a good debate and good sportsmanship. Okay, back row. You're on notice. We're starting with you today. So we'll get to the back row today and then the middle row for comment. So get your ballots in quickly. I want to get more comments in.
I know, me too.
I'm gonna run for the rest of the night.
Anyone else need to sign in? Oh, yes. I didn't sign it yesterday. For showing up.
Yeah. Video.
Do you mind just handing this up?
Professor, here's the sign-up sheet.
Thank you. Good dated.
Could we, yeah.
Professor?
Yeah. Is Ian Johnson here?
Ian Johnson, I don't see him.
What? Is that Ian Johnson?
Oh, that guy.
He's like walking out too.
One more. Another one.
Do I have all the ballots? May I have the ballots, please? Thanks so much. Olivia Newton-John, could you hand me Thank you.
Oh yeah, that's one
This is Cross-sex.
My cross-examination is included within this. So.
Okay.
Oh, no, sorry, it was included within the. This is my cross-examination. It was made noticeable.
Well, you're bugging me. Staple it to that. I'm busy. Okay, great. Who's somebody whose last name is O.R.? Who is O.R.? Who is here? Figure this out. They didn't put it
You guys told me that.
Thank you.
What makes like this chapter?
Oh, there's one more ballot. Oh, and 9. Sorry, I was like totally going to pass it
Honestly, like, I like not lungs for I like oh, I like someone else. Yeah, I was watching it.
Okay, folks. On the question of whether hurricanes and other extreme climate events, rising sea level, there were 3, tornadoes, are an imminent consequence of global warming, the decision goes to the opposition. On an 11 close to 13 decision, it goes to the opposition. Let's start with the back row here, quickly. I want to get everybody in today. Go.
Sam, I like.
Okay, move your faces, please. Thank you.
I like Kyla's outline of the topic, and I also liked Bez's refutation at the end. I like both of them, but I sided with the opposition.
Oh, why?
Bez's refutation at the end sort of solidified my decision.
Good, yeah. Thank you.
I don't know, I could be like alone in this, but I thought that in general it was like kind of hard to follow the debate like as an audience member, because like there's a lot of back and forth about like what the topic was. I feel like that's something that you guys should have like clarified, because it's kind of like, I don't know, it was kind of confusing. So I ended up siding with the proposition just because it was like easier to follow their argument. It seems like we've been using climate change and global warming like pretty interchangeably, so it was tough for me to like adhere to that distinction that you were making.
You make a very good point, and we call that signposting. And in particular, in rebuttals, I fault both sides for not saying, on unreliability, she said this, I disagree, because therefore unreliability is not an issue. We didn't know where to line up all the myriad of arguments. Yes, sir, please.
I'm Daniel. I sided with the opposition.
Sir, move your head. Yeah.
So Kayla, in your cross-examination, a lot of it was like defining, well, it was like definitional, and so like that was unfortunate that it took up like half of your cross-ex, so that was kind of like a little unfortunate piece of the cross-examination, but the like clarity in your arguments in like your opening statement and in your refutation was really good. And then also at the end, when you put like the onus of reducing global warming on like an individual level, it kind of like felt like it was like very value based, and like I think that all this was about is just kind of like saying like what's the facts. And then Yang, So saying that the data and the databases and the data is like difficult to prove because of the models and the databases that it's like from, kind of like was really helpful in refuting some of the proposition. And then Bez, also the conclusive evidence can't be grounded in poor data. That was helpful to you. And then you did a really good job defending yourself in cross-examination. And then for you had really impressive like when you put the burden of proof, you defended that the burden of proof kind of should maybe also be on the opposition. That was helpful because that was thrown at you, and then you had good like volume and like crowd audience consideration. So yeah, good job.
Right. One comment I want to make, which we're seeing in the popular media these days, is any big hurricane or any big storm is automatically linked to global warming. And if anything, this debate at least throws some doubt on that linkage. Yes, sir.
My name is Jeremy.
Hi, Jeremy.
I thought there was some ambiguity over the...
Can you put your MacBook down? Thank you.
Some ambiguity over the exact topic, but I feel like he did a really good job of clarifying that for me, and that was why I ended up siding with the proposition.
Yeah.
I wanted to say also, though, I thought that Yang was especially effective in bringing to doubt some of the resources that were put forth by the proposition, and I think that at first I started to lean the other way as a direct result of that, but he, with a lot of his he just was really composed, and I feel like very direct with the way that he defined the issue and continued to put the onus on the opposition to clarify how they are not overcoming their burden of proof and how they're falling short of that, because I feel like they did a good job of actually.
Good. While you're standing up, the question we have is who did it? While you're standing up and you're sitting down, who did have the burden of proof? The government clearly has the burden of proof, and the opposition has the burden of rejoindre in this debate. So
personally, I didn't like how you guys were focusing too much on what global warming was. I thought it was a huge distraction to the actual debate. I voted for the opposition because you guys showed how during the current global cooling period we're in right now, hurricanes have actually gone up, which is against what we're talking about today. I didn't like your claim about this whole uncertainty of the other side, because you're uncertain, they're certain. Seems, based on that alone, I should have voted for them, but because of how hurricanes have gone up, I voted for you guys. Kayla, I really liked how during your rebuttal was a lot better than your brief because you had really good inflection. And during your brief, I felt that you had like the same volume throughout, so it kind of seemed monotone. And I kind of like said it was like in contrast with Rona, how like she was up and down with volume, which I thought was really good. Hee-sung, I thought you were the best speaker because in your speech you had impact and inflection, which kind of stood out compared to the other speakers. During your brief, I thought you focused too much on how bad global warming is and not enough on the debate itself.
The link.
The link, yes.
Yeah.
Bez, your speaking style was a lot slower, which made it easier to follow. But I thought during your brief you swayed too much. You like kind of did this and this, and I think when you watch the video, you kind of see that too.
Yeah.
Yang, I thought during your cross-ex of Kayla, you did a really good job pointing out how a lot of her evidence were hypotheticals. But I thought your brief was all over the place and it was kind of hard to follow. Like a good thing about Bez's was he was like, now I'm going to talk about this. So I think you should kind of adopt that more in your style. It might be better.
Thank you. Where does your evidence sit and go? Yes, please. Could you move your heads, please? Say your name.
I'm Robin.
Hi, Robin.
Hi. So Kayla and he, you guys did an excellent job. You're very organized. The problem was it became very confusing what exactly we were arguing. Were we arguing imminent consequences, global warming, climate change? It seemed to be all over the place. So I voted for the opposition, and primarily it's because Bez kind of took control and started to really hammer down on what the points really were that were being